From hiring lawyers to even buying a gun, critics of Donald Trump are bracing for the worst. According to new reporting in the New York Times, quote, one public critic of Mr. Trump, who played a prominent role in one of the efforts to hold him accountable during his first term, said in an interview that he recently bought a gun for the first time in his life because he was afraid that Trump supporters, emboldened by a president willing to pardon them, will attack him and his family at home. Others have, quote, retained powerful law firms in Washington. And one departing Biden White House official said his plans for the immediate future are, quote, step one, take a long vacation on the opposite side of the globe. Step two, fly home and hire a lawyer. All of those fears are chillingly underscored by insurrectionists now emboldened by Trump's pardon. Take one example, the QAnon shaman who said, quote, now I'm going to buy some mother effing guns. Joining us, New York Times investigative reporter and MSNBC national security contributor Mike Schmidt, who's bylined on that reporting. And outside the D.C. jail, where many January 6 defendants have been held, my colleague, MSNBC anchor Alex Wagner is here as well. Mike, that's your reporting about how some folks were preparing. It ran before Trump pardoned, more than at least J.D. Vance was read in on in terms of how sweeping those pardons and commutations were going to be. J.D. Vance saying less than a week ago that he would never pardon the violent insurrectionists, and he did. Does that alter any of the planning to protect themselves or their families for any of the folks you talked to?
Well, I think what we tried to do was we tried to go out and capture this unique moment in American history where a president was coming in who said, I'm going to use the powers of the federal government to seek vengeance. So what is it like to be one of those people? What is that human experience like? And we tried to talk to many of these folks, and they wouldn't talk. No one really wanted to talk, certainly not on the record. A few of them did. And the thing that came through from what they were saying was actually that they were not as concerned about being prosecuted or investigated. They still believe in the rule of law and in the sense that Trump's powers in that area are limited in large part because of the courts. And they think that the courts would be there to advocate for them or to ensure that they are not prosecuted unjustly. So from a perspective of prosecution, they were less concerned. And they also said, look, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, I have faith in the courts. It's about their security that they're most worried about. It's about the fact that if Donald Trump is naming them, that he makes them a target for his supporters. And some of these folks, we talked to Fanone for this story, were saying this before the rioters had received their commutations, and their concerns were that when you did that, you created, 1,500 potential new folks to go after them, and that these people who Trump has identified and gone after become sort of bounty to Trump and become targets for Trump. And they think that these rioters or that other folks would see what Trump did with the rioters and that they would receive clemency too, even if they went ahead and did something. So that is why in the story we have this anecdote about a person who we don't publicly identify, but who we obviously know who the person is, who went out and got a gun because they were afraid about their safety. The person was more afraid about their safety than they were about being prosecuted.
Enter Alex Wagner in an extraordinary body of reporting from outside the jail with folks who say they would die for Donald Trump. Tell us more.
I'm outside the jail right now, Nicole, and I don't know if you can hear, but YMCA is playing. Lauren Boebert was just here saying she's ready to offer a personal private tour of the Capitol to all of the inmates who are soon to be released from just behind me. Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, is walking around. There is a mood of jubilation, deep commitment to Trump and the Trump agenda in his 47th presidency. And I was speaking last night with a father of two of the inmates inside. His name is Ben Pollock. His children, Jonathan Pollock and Olivia Pollock, are inside. They have been pardoned by President Trump, and they are expected to come out any minute. And I was just trying to get a sense of how he's thinking about this moment. He, too, was at January 6th. He was not charged. But just the level of commitment on the part of not just the inmates, but those surrounding them, the entire community of J6ers, as they call themselves, now that Trump is back in power. And I think it's important that everybody get a little bit of perspective on this and hear this clip from last night. Ben Pollock. Okay, so you have how many children in there?
I got two. I got a son and a daughter.
What were they convicted of?
They were convicted of about everything that any other J6er was convicted of. I've been crying for 4 years over every one of those men are my friends, or every one of them are my children. And I've been praying that God's been breaking my heart for 4 years over this whole situation, because these men are true heroes because they stood up for what's right.
Are you worried that there are people that are going to be really upset about this? I know that you guys talk about a time for healing.
I am not worried about that. They've been trying to kill it. They've been trying to kill Donald Trump. God's protected him. God's protected my family.
Donald Trump said today he thinks he was sent by God to do this work. Do you think that's true?
God is so much behind this revival in America, and this is a revival.
Do you think now that he's pardoned everybody, he can count on this group of people again?
Oh, absolutely. I would die for the man. I would have died for him that day.
Nicole, that's a sentiment that is shared by other now freed inmates that I've talked to from other jails who've come to D.C. to sort of be a part of this moment. And they've said, look, if Donald Trump calls us back into action, there are things we will take to the streets for. One person mentioned immigration, that protecting the border. Like if they need to go to the border and stop people from coming in physically, they will do that. The sense of energy and of excitement and of optimism about how much is possible under Trump is really palpable here today.
How much what is possible? What's the what of what they plan to do, Alex?
Well, first of all, I mean, you have to understand that they are with Donald. I mean, they have been with Donald Trump. Not a single person in jail that I spoke to understood Donald Trump to be culpable for any of the, the punishment that was being meted out upon them. Their allegiance to him has only grown over their period of incarceration, right? And they're coming out absolutely trusting and believing in everything that he's saying. So to a certain degree, they're waiting for, the marching orders. And I think it's, Donald Trump has proposed a number of things that are extrajudicial or at least not outlined in the Constitution. And I think it's a matter of the degree to which he intends on directing his supporters to help him carry out those orders. Some things are going to be possible to be, that are going to be litigated in the court system. But other things, they stand ready, I think, is the general feeling I'm getting here.
So, Mike, this is a list of people you published before these pardons as being in line for Trump's retribution, people he's named in tweets or in speeches repeatedly. Prosecutors and judges, including Jack Smith, Letitia James, Judge Engoron, Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, the January 6 investigators, General Mark Milley, Michael Cohen, John Bolton, Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, 51 former top intelligence officials, including John Brennan, Jim Clapper, Leon Panetta, the media, Mark Zuckerberg, President Biden, President Obama, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi. It's a list no one wants to be on, but it actually has lots and lots of other members. Having covered the FBI, I mean, how would in normal times an FBI assess the threat environment?
Well, those people have been identified by Trump, and
I guess what I'm saying is Christopher Wray testified before Congress in September of 2020 that the greatest threat facing the country was domestic violent extremism. And his sworn testimony goes on to say, and in that bucket, the largest category is white supremacist ideology. You now have a group that Alex Wagner just described doing interviews on camera saying, quote, I would die for the man. I would have died for him on that day. I mean, with Christopher Wray as the most recent FBI director to have testified and identified and named the problem, and for Alex Wagner to have this fresh interview with people who are the recipients of pardons. And if you lay over that, your list of stated targets, what would you assess sort of the environment or the climate or the threat environment to be for these folks?
I think it just underscores the fears about their security, that is the thing that people on that list fear the most. They fear a situation like what happened with Nancy Pelosi's husband, that they will find themselves attacked at home, unable to do something, having to call the police and waiting for the police to respond, and having to defend themselves for at least several minutes by themselves. That is their biggest fear. So if that's their fear, there are now a group of people out on the streets who have shown a willingness to use violence in the name of Donald Trump, who Trump has identified as potential targets. So it is about security. Those are the fears of those people on the list. It's about their security.
Alex Wagner, an incredible body of interviews. Thank you so much for being there and doing that work for us and for joining us.